Quick, graph y equals the cube root of the opposite of x by hand 2 different ways, and decide if the cube root function is even, odd, or neither. This is part of the Family of Functions series. You will need graph paper or download this PDF and print it. Press pause as needed anytime during this video. The first way is with what we call the Cuberoot Dance. Normally we start at the origin, and since the opposite of 0 is 0 and the cube root of 0 is 0, we will begin at that origin. Because of the opposite sign in front of x, we need to take the opposite of x before we take the cube root. For example, write 1 down 1 because the opposite of 1 is -1 and the cube root of -1 is -1. Write 8 down 2. The opposite of 8 is -8 and the cube root of -8 is -2. Going in the other direction, left 1, up 1. The opposite of -1 is +1 and the cube root of +1 is 1. And then the opposite of -8 is 8. Cube root of 8 is 2, so left 8, up 2. Connect the points, and we get our beautiful cube root graph. Comparing that to the parent function, you can see that those two are not equal. They are not the same, so this function is not even. But if you bring in the opposite of x, the cube root of x, and compare it to the cube root of the opposite of x, you can see that those are identical. And so the cubing function is an odd function. Second way, using a table. This is our standard cube root table. We're going to keep the x coordinates the same, but then we have to take the opposite and then take the cube root of that answer. So the opposite of 8 is -8, and the cube root of -8 is -2. So when x is 8, y is -2 is plotted. When x is 1, the cube root of -1 is -1. When x is 1, the cube root of the opposite of 1 is the cube root of -1, which is -1, so 1, -1. When x is 0, the origin stays the same. When x is -1, the opposite of -1 is +1, and the cube root of +1 is 1, so -1, 1. And finally, when x is -8, the opposite is +8. The cube root of +8 is 2, -8, 2. Connect the points. Compare it to the other graphs, and you can see again that since the green and the brown graph are the same, f of opposite of x equals the opposite of f of x, the cubing function is an odd function.